RRSP, RRIF, what's the difference? A lot of you get confused and it comes across our plate in our office every single day. So I thought I'd put together a video talking about RRSPs, RRIFs, which is a retirement income fund, when to convert from an RRSP to RRIF, how it all works, and give you direction on what to do going forward. My name's Adam, welcome to the channel, thanks for joining us. As you know, an RRSP or retirement savings plan is one of the best, if not the best tools to save for your retirement. It's great tax savings, it defers the growth over time, and you just pay the tax when you pull the money out in retirement, which is hopefully in a lower tax bracket. It's a lot of confusion around when to convert an RRSP to a RRIF, and as we build retirement plans, one of the number one questions we get is, Adam, why and when do I convert my RRSP to a RRIF, a retirement income fund? So an RRSP is for savings. It's while you're 18 up to whenever you retire to build that asset, to save up, As soon as you flick the switch to start drawing income out of an RRSP for retirement, ideally you want to convert to a RRIF, and I'll explain why here in a minute. So if you think of it, an RRSP is while you're saving, a RRIF, a retirement income fund, is while you're drawing it out or drawing down that account. Now let's quickly touch on an RRSP. You can have as many RRSPs as you want. I don't recommend having too many because you might lose some of them. And I'm not kidding you, we have clients that will touch base with us years down the road after we've been working with them and say, oh, I just came across an old statement, and sure enough, they have 10, 20, 30,000. And it's typically from old work plans. So if you have movement in your job and you move around quite a bit, make sure you're always consolidating your RRSPs into one so that you don't forget about one. And trust me, it happens all the time. Don't let that be you. When you come to the point when you convert it to a RRIF, you can have multiple RRIFs as well, but simplify your life, make it easier on yourself, get that down ideally to one, but maybe two different RRIFs. All that does is it creates more tax slips for you, both while you're putting money in, but on your RRIF, when you're drawing money out in retirement, simplify your life, have as few slips as you can, and have as few RRIFs as you can. One thing I want to bring up before, as a blanket saying RRSP to RRIF draw out at retirement is if you're using a spousal RRSP, just be aware of attribution rules. If you've been contributing to spousal RRSP all the way to the date that you retire, you need to wait 3 years, current year plus 2 years, before you start drawing it out, or there will be attribution tax back to you, not to who you're trying to save that money for. So just be aware of that. If you're utilizing a spousal RRSP, make sure you understand the rules of that before you start drawing money out of a spousal RRIF. Now comes the main question. Why do we want to utilize a RRIF over an RRSP? There's a couple key reasons. When you hit retirement, if you just leave your money in an RRSP and you start pulling money out of the RRSP, there's going to be withholding taxes. And there's going to be withholding tax from $1. So if you pull out, let's say $20,000 from your RRSP, you're going to have a 30% withholding tax on the whole thing. Now that 30% withholding tax might be, and probably is, a much higher tax rate than what your average tax rate will be, and thus it's going to generate a tax refund for you. But what that means is that the government has your money in the meantime. Ideally, we want to keep that in your pocket. The second reason why pulling money out of an RRSP versus a RRIF might not make sense for you is because most financial institutions charge a transaction fee or a withdrawal fee on pulling money out of an RRSP, because an RRSP is made for savings. It's a savings plan. Once you convert to a RRIF, it's an income plan, meaning that it's an account designed to pull money out. If you're at most of the major institutions and you pull money out of an RRSP, you're going to pay a $25, maybe a $50 fee per transaction. Whereas if you just convert it to a RRIF, which is done, free of charge, you can now start pulling those income draws out on a fee-free basis. Now going back to the withholding tax. So if we look at a situation where, say, a client has a $100,000 RRSP and they need to start drawing money out of it. Let's assume the client needs to pull out $10,000 this year. If they pull $10,000 out of a RRSP, they're going to have withholding tax of 20%. And just a refresher for all of you, the withholding tax, anything $0 to $5,000 is a 10% withholding tax. Anything from $5,001 up to $15,000 is 20%, and above $15,000 is 30%. In Quebec, it's a little bit different. There's a provincial and a federal. We'll link that below as well. If the client has $100,000 and they need to pull out $10,000. If you leave it in the RRSP, there's going to be a 20% withholding tax on the whole thing. So there's going to be $2,000 withheld, $8,000 in your pocket, and probably a $25 transaction fee. If we do the same process, but before we pull money out of the RRSP, we convert that RRSP into a RIF. Let's say the client's 65 years old, 100,000 RRIF account at this point. It's a 4% withholding minimum, which means that they have to take out, the minimum withdrawal amount is 4%, or $4,000 in this case. So if the client's going to take out $10,000, the first $4,000, there's no withholding tax on the minimum RIF amount. So the first $4,000, client can take out absolutely tax-free, no withholding tax. The next $6,000 up to that $10,000, so the next $6,000 has a 20% withholding tax. And that's because it's between $5,000 and $15,000. So it's the amount above the minimum that they look at for how much withholding tax is going to be withheld. Now, that first $4,000 that has no withholding tax, it's still taxable income. It's not tax-free income, but there's just no withholding tax on it. So when we look at this picture, we've converted it to a RIF, we've taken out $10,000. There's been 20% withholding tax on the additional $6,000, which means that only $1,200 is withheld for taxes, or about 12% of the overall $10,000 withdrawal. So hopefully you follow along with that. The first $4,000, no withholding tax. Only above the minimum, in this case $4,000, has that withholding tax. Very important, because what happens is, with that RRSP, you're being withheld on the full amount, which probably in retirement is much more tax than you need to pay. And again, I'm using maybe a smaller example. If you're taking out $20,000 or $30,000 from an RRSP, converting to a RIF has that much more value. You want to make sure that minimum amount, you can avoid any withholding tax. Again, when you work with your financial planner and putting a tax plan together, hopefully they'll be able to show you what your average tax rate and total tax bill is. So if your average tax rate is, say, 10 or 15%, there's a lot of value in making sure that there's no withholding tax on the minimum, because there's probably going to be at least 20, maybe 30% on the amount above the minimum on that RRIF withdrawal. So there's a couple more benefits to converting from an RRSP to a RRIF, but first I want to thank our sponsor for this video, Passiv. Passiv is great for passive investors, new or established. If you're managing your own investing, Passiv is the tool. It allows you to be a better investor. You'll be more organized, make good investment decisions, and feel more confident in your portfolio. Passiv makes it so easy to connect your entire portfolio from your brokerage, which gives you incredible power over your portfolio. You can manage your portfolio and analyze it as one single piece, which saves you time and gives you the 10,000-foot view of your investment position that you're looking for. Passiv notifications give you a feeling of freedom that your portfolio is self-managing while you're doing things more important to you. When the market changes or new cash hits your account, you'll be notified so you can decide what to do. Passiv returns so much value in time and money because it eliminates the need for a spreadsheet, which I know many of you are using. So drop those spreadsheets. No more equations, no more calculating what you need to buy or sell and how much. No more logging in to execute those trades one by one. Set a target and have Passiv do the heavy lifting. All you need to do is execute the necessary trades you want in one click. Passiv will change how you look at your assets. If you're considering changes to your portfolio, you can even create model portfolios that will allow you to understand the impact of every move you make before you make them. I've personally used Passiv for quite some time now for my own personal trading accounts, just monitoring everything in one place. Again, I have stuff in a few different locations, and Passiv's been great to kind of consolidate everything in one view and keep a great close eye on it. Passiv Elite is a bargain at $99 a year. And for a lot of you that are Questrade users, if you're DIY investors, it's absolutely free. But don't worry, if you're not with Questrade, they do have a free account and there's no credit card required at account setup. So thank you, Passiv, for sponsoring this video. Onto the content. So probably the biggest reason to convert an RRSP to a RRIF if you're 65 or over is utilizing the pension income tax credit. And this gives you $2,000 of pension income, which RRIF income qualifies for, absolutely tax-free. If you leave that money in an RRSP, it will not qualify for the pension income tax credit. So if you're 65 or older and you're kind of on the fence, like, yeah, Adam, I don't really get this. Like, should I convert to a RRIF, leave it in RRSP? You need to convert to a RRIF and take at least $2,000 out every single year 65 onwards because it's tax-free money. The last tip I have for all of you out there around RRSPs and RRIFs is this. When you convert to a RRIF, you don't need to move 100% of your RRSP over to the RRIF. So let's say you have a really big RRSP, $500,000, but you don't want to convert the whole thing to a RRIF because you might go back to work, maybe the minimum amount, you don't want to drive up too high. There's multiple reasons that possibly you don't want to convert the whole thing to a RRIF. Well, you can set up the RRIF account and move only part of your RRSP over. So let's say you want to move 100,000 over, but leave 400,000 in the RRSP account. Absolutely, you're able to do that. So it can be a partial conversion over to the RRIF. And remember, you don't have to sell what you have in the RRSP and then rebuy it in the RRIF. It's basically, think of it as an umbrella. One umbrella is titled RRSP, the other umbrella is titled RRIF. Whatever you hold within the RRSP is just moved over as it is under that RRIF umbrella. So hopefully that helps you make a better decision around RRSP and RRIF as you move forward in your retirement.